Welcome to another episode of Latino Loud. Today we have Nevada Secretary of State Francisco Aguilar, and we'll be talking about all things elections in Nevada, especially around how elections are secure and how the integrity is maintained through your office.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Latino Loud. Brought to you by Chicanos Por La Causa Action Fund.
So we'll start, Secretary, we'll start with you telling us a little bit about what your office does. I know a lot of people hear the term Secretary of State, but they're really not familiar with the services or what your office does.
Great. No, I'm always excited to talk about what we do here in the Secretary of State's office. We have about 8 divisions. We have obviously the 3 most important are, 1, I serve as the Chief Elections Officer for the state of Nevada. So we regulate the elections. We don't actually run the elections. The 17 clerks across our state actually execute on the elections. Our job is to be a regulator. It's our job to be a referee, to make sure the clerks are following the law and doing what they need to do to ensure that Nevadans have access to the ballot box. The other responsibility is we do commercial and corporate recording. So any business that is present here in Nevada has to file with our office. That system and that program is one of the largest revenue generators in the state of Nevada. We generate about $250 million a year, which goes directly to the general fund and allows us to fund some of the projects across the state. You know, over the last few years, Nevada's lost some of its market share in commercial and corporate recordings to Wyoming, Montana, Idaho. And that's just because our technology is old, our system is old, but we are in the process of doing a total replacement. So we'll have a new system and hopefully we'll bring back some of that business and continue to generate additional revenue for the state of Nevada. The third is securities regulations. We regulate investment advisors. We regulate investment banks, mostly monitoring for fraud. If somebody's out there raising capital or trying to take an investment from someone, we want to make sure it's on the up and up and make sure we're doing what we can to protect investors throughout Nevada.
Perfect. That sounds like a lot. Your office does a lot, but today we're going to focus specifically on that first one. I think we should do different podcasts on the other 2. But today we're going to be talking about elections. We're less than 35 days away from the election at this point. I know that, like you said, you are responsible for the state of Nevada and making sure that every county has the information that they need. One of the things that we've noticed in community is the conversation about people not voting early or participating in this election cycle because they think that the process is complicated. They're getting confused with the process of mail-in ballots, voting early, and then voting on election day. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation going on out there. What would you say to folks that are thinking about sitting out this election cycle because the process is complicated?
I don't think the process is complicated. I think what it is it's a consequence of all the information that's coming out about the elections. It's misinformation. It's scaring people. This is exactly what I think some groups wanted to accomplish, was the voter disenfranchisement. And so we need to work to get voters to understand that the process in Nevada is pretty simple. It's pretty clear and it's pretty easy. You know, we have 2 weeks of early voting, which people can vote in person. We have universal mail ballot, which people can participate through mail, or they can vote on election day. We also have digital voting through the EASE system that Nevadans living overseas, military members overseas, you know, individuals who are homebound because of a disability, and tribal members living on tribal land can use the digital system to vote. The intention is never to make it complicated. The intention is to make it as accessible as possible. And I think as people put misinformation, disinformation out there, it starts to scare voters from actually participating in the process. And I think that's an intended consequence of what we're trying to accomplish.
I completely agree with you. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation going around. Like I mentioned, specifically in communities of color, the Latino community, we've been seeing a lot of messaging where there's a lot of stuff that my tias, my abuelitas, and everybody in the community is talking about. One of the big things, and something that I fight with my mom and making sure that she's telling her friends that are eligible to vote, is they're saying, if I don't understand the ballot, or if I don't understand something, I'm just gonna skip that race or that candidate. Why is it important to have every single person in Nevada vote down ballot or go down all the way? I know we start with this cycle, we're going to start with the presidential races up here, but what's at the very bottom of the ballot that's crucial and important for our communities to be to make sure that they're participating and voting?
I think every vote matters because a lot of the issues that impact our daily lives are decided at the local level, right? It's about zoning in the county. It's about human services that are provided by local governments, both county and city. It's about the education of our kids, especially when you're looking at trustee races. Clark County is the 5th largest school district in the country. Those are important positions. There are also billions and billions of dollars that are being spent in a way that need to be spent for the benefit of the kids. And so if we're not voting for those down ballot races, we're going to see things we don't want, and those we have to hold people accountable for the decisions they're making about some of the decisions that impact our daily lives. Federal races are important. Yes, the issues that they decide are critical, but in reality, when you look at our daily lives, it's state, local, and city races that matter the most because we see those folks every day. They understand our community, they understand the challenges, and we need to vote for the people that believe in our priorities.
Thank you. One of the other things that we're noticing is the ballot questions. There's very, very important questions on the ballot this cycle. One of the questions that PPOC is voting against is ranked choice voting, or we're opposing ranked choice voting. And that's because there's a lot of misinformation again. And the word today is going to be misinformation and disinformation because we want to make sure that community gets the right information out there. Can you tell us what would change in the election, the way the elections are run, or the election outcomes if question 3 is to pass? I know right now the messaging is it opens our primaries. Everyone's going to get to vote on primaries all across the board. But there's a message that's deeper in that. And what the question actually is going to do is going to be more than just opening our primaries for everyone to be able to participate.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay out of that issue just because, again, my job is to regulate the election. But when it comes to election administration, I think it's important for people to understand what the biggest nuances are. One of them is Nevadans demand to know election results as close to the election as possible. We're working really hard with our 17 clerks throughout the state to make sure that we're able to give election results the night of the election. We have been working really hard with Clark County and Washoe County to build capacity. In 22, Washoe County had 97% of the ballots on hand on election day. Clark County had 95% of the ballots on hand on election day. What they didn't have was the capacity to process all the mail ballots that they had received. And so over the last 14 months, we've been working really, really hard to build that capacity, buying new machines, increasing the number of machines that they have, making sure they're training additional staff to manage the machines and to increase that capacity. And we want Nevadans to get those results as close to election night as possible. We tested the process. We tested a new process during the June primary, and we were able to give out the initial results within 10 minutes of the last person voting in Nevada. I think that helped Nevadans understand what we were trying to accomplish. It gave them the information they desired. The media had the information they needed to make the decisions they make. It's no different this general election. And if we were to switch to ranked choice voting, we'd actually not be able to give out unofficial election results for 6 days after the election. That amount of time is pretty significant for people to come up with theories, conspiracies, whatever it is. And that's taken away from exactly what we're trying to accomplish through our increased capacity for election night.
Perfect. So once again, your office is trying to maintain the integrity of elections and making sure that we're producing results as soon as possible rather than waiting a couple of days to allow people to then start with conspiracy theories.
That's correct. Look, I ran in 22. Well, the election was on Tuesday, like it normally is, but I didn't find out I won my race until Saturday after that Tuesday. The amount of time for information to flow back and forth is pretty significant. What we need to do to help voters understand we're accomplishing what we intend to accomplish is decrease that amount of time and make sure voters have access to all the information they need to make intelligent decisions.
Awesome. Thank you. And one of the things that voters don't necessarily see is that it's not just you and one other person in your office. The election work it's all compiled by the amazing election workers that are out there for early vote, before early vote, during election day. And they're the ones that are the ones doing the ballot counting. They're part of the commission. The work would not be able to be done if it wasn't for these folks doing that work. And I know that there's this conspiracy theory, going back to conspiracy theories, that the elections can be rigged, elections can be stolen. But can you tell us why it's so integral for community members to if they can become poll workers, apply to become a poll worker, and if they can't be poll workers, how can we get them to go out there and be election protection workers to ensure that the integrity of our elections stay in place?
Well, first, I think it's understanding how the system works, right? We just implemented a statewide voter registration and election management system, which we implemented top-down voter registration. Prior to this system, we had bottom-up, which meant all 17 counties had a different system, had a different process for voter registration, for election management. Some of those systems that they used were not supported by the vendor anymore, so they were susceptible to potential cybersecurity attacks. They were susceptible to other issues. And now we have one unified system, which is unifying the process throughout the state. We have one database for for all our voter registration management information. Allowing us to have a single system allows us to maintain an even stronger voter roll, which is a critical part of this. Then there's the tabulation side. The tabulation side is where the ballots are processed and the votes are counted. That's still a decentralized model. It's decentralized on purpose. That allows us to have checks and balances between our 17 counties because it allows them to develop processes that protect that system. The tabulation process is no way connected to the internet. There are safeguards in place to protect that process. There are division of duties of dividing up the responsibility so that security is maintained at the highest level possible, all throughout the process. And then when votes are tabulated, it's done at the local level by the county leaders, and it's sent up to the state through a process that, again, is not connected to the internet. It is an FTP secure system and allows us to aggregate all the results from the 17 counties. By giving the 17 county clerks the responsibility of their own community, helps us even build a stronger process and a stronger system. Yes, we do need election workers. We do need poll workers. It is important for our community to step up and get involved because what it does is it accomplishes a couple of things. One is it exposes the process to people that may not know how the system works. But having community members working polling locations that speak the language of our community only encourages more people to participate. If you walk into a polling site and you see your neighbor or your friend who speaks the language you speak at home, it makes that process even simpler. It makes it easier and you're comfortable doing it. We have been spending a lot of time across the state recruiting election workers. We know it's hard to be an election worker. We know it's hard to be a poll worker, given the environment we're in. But we need to remind people that decency is the number one goal. We need to respect each other. We need to get along. We can disagree on policy and some of the issues that we talk about, but there's no reason to treat somebody in a threatening or harassing way. We passed the bill at the legislature, SB 406, which made it a felony to harass or intimidate election workers. 80% of our election workers are women. Those are our daughters, our sisters, our mothers, our grandmothers. We want to ensure that when they're at a polling location or election center, that they're safe and they feel comfortable in that environment. We haven't had any major issues to date. The primary was pretty smooth. The presidential primary was pretty smooth. Again, it's making sure that we remind each other, these are our neighbors. These are our friends who are doing this work. They live in our communities and we need to respect them and thank them for what they do. They do what we need them to do to protect our fundamental right to vote. Again, we've spent a lot of time on poll workers. We've been recruiting high school students because you can be 16 in Nevada to be a poll worker. And we get young people into this process. They get exposure to something they didn't know exists. They learn about it. They may be motivated to be an election worker or get involved in the political arena. They may run for office. But also, too, the kids speak the language of their community. And if they're speaking language that makes people comfortable to vote, all for it. I know if I was a poll worker as a youngster, everybody would probably show up in my family, my tío, my tías, just because they'd be so excited that somebody was engaging in a process that they fundamentally believe so strongly matters to our community. So there are things we're doing. It's exciting. It's exciting to be in this position to kind of come up with some of those creative things.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I want to remind everyone, when you're out there voting, make sure you think that poll worker, they're there very, very long hours of the day. Be kind, like the secretary said. You're waiting in line. They're also waiting in there. They're trying to make sure that the lines are moving as quickly as possible. So be nice to them. Say thank you to them. And just, again, it doesn't cost anything to be nice to people. Mr. Secretary, one of the other things that we want to talk about is we want to make sure that the Latino community goes out and votes. You mentioned early voting, voting day of, and mail ballots. And you mentioned a couple of the policies that we've been able to pass in the state. What is your message for someone, let's say like my 19-year-old brother, who has looked at me in the eyes and said, I don't know if I'm going to vote this year. I'm too busy with school. I'm too busy with whatever. The reality is most of our young folks are busy with video games, and they need to realize that there's a lot at stake. So how do we engage that young community to ensure that they're participating? Because we are the first ones to say, no, there's no change no change happens. Why is nothing going on? But they're also the community that's mostly not participating. How do we change that? And what work have you seen has been going on in the community to get them engaged?
I think first of all, understand that Nevada is one of the most competitive states in the country. Our races are decided by close margins. Young people can determine who the outcome of those races are. In Clark County a few years ago, we had a commissioner's race that was decided by 30 votes. We recently saw in Reno that one of the city council races was decided by 84 votes. So these races can flip pretty significantly based on who participates. And if we get young people to vote, they have more power than most. Their vote matters in Nevada more than most states. They have a direct line to electing the next president of the United States. And that is important power for them to have. But more importantly, especially in our Latino community, we have so many people in our community who don't have access to the ballot box, right? And it's important for them to understand you're not just voting for yourself, but you're voting for the people that don't have a vote. And that's where I think we can motivate young people to think about, hey, if we knew some of the people we know had the power to vote, they would vote, but they can't. And so we need to use our fundamental right to vote to help improve the situation, not only for us, for those in our community who don't have access to the ballot box. And so hopefully that gets to them.
I love that message. That's actually the message I used for my brother as a formerly undocumented person. And I was able to vote for the first time in 2016. I was like, hey, I was unable to vote for so many years. Now that I'm casting a ballot, I'm not just casting it for myself. I'm casting it for my mom. I'm casting it for your dad. I'm casting it for our tios and tias that are not eligible to vote. So I'm glad that message is still a message that resonates with young folks, and that's what we're pushing out.
Especially in our community here in Las Vegas, like the Strip is built on immigrant labor, especially Latino labor. Those people, our workers, work hard every single day. When I was running for office, I went to the Culinary Academy, and a few of the workers from the culinary came and made me make a bed in their training facility. That's hard work. And it just reminds me and makes me think about, hey, this easily could have been my Nana, right? She could have been 60 years old, working hard every single day to make a bed for a guest. And sometimes our community doesn't have access to the polls, and that's who you're voting for, or why you're trying to make that internet.
All right. We know that we're only 30 something days away from the election. I know Nevada has same day voter registration, but I know there's a lot of groups like Chicanos Por La Causa that are doing paper voter registration, Mi Familia Vota, and a couple of the other groups are on the ground. Can you tell us when the last day to register with these organizations is? And then if people are still wanting to register, how can they register? And how has the state made it a lot easier for folks to be able to register even after this deadline?
Well, I believe it's October 22nd. That's the last day to register to vote to get a mail ballot. And so I think it's important to use that as a focal point, is October 22nd, because if they've registered to vote by October 22nd.
But that's online, right?
I believe it. Yes, it should be.
Yeah.
It should be on one of the major election days.
The paper deadline is the 8th. So to register with us or register with like the folks outside of Cardenas, I think the deadline is on the 8th. Just to say, am I right?
Well, it's just whether or not they want a paper. It's whether or not they get a mail ballot. That's the question. And to get a mail ballot, you have to register by October 22nd.
Cool. Perfect. And then speaking of mail ballots, I know that your office sends out sample ballots and mail ballots.
The clerks actually send it. The county clerks send out this.
The clerk sent that out. So they will be sending out the sample ballots and the mail-in ballots. Why are those important, and how can people use those tools that are going to be coming to their house as a prerequisite or something to set up their voting? What's the word I'm looking here?
What's research? It's voter education.
There you go.
It's learning about the candidates. It's giving you an opportunity to think about the candidates, to learn the candidate's position. And so those voter guides are critical because they also help you identify a polling location should you choose to want to vote in person, or if you'd like to use your paper ballot and drop it off at a voting location. That's what the purpose of the voter guide is to give you that opportunity to increase those choices to participate. And I know the counties across the state have the clerks have to mail their mail ballots by October 16th. Some will mail them a little bit earlier, but it's all depending on the process and printing. You know, we're a little bit delayed because of the Green Party's lawsuit against us at the U.S. Supreme Court. We won that case, and so clerks were able to move forward with the ballot printing.
And you mentioned that in the sample ballot, folks can find polling locations. In Nevada, we're fortunate enough where we don't have to go vote in our precinct like we had to in the mid-2000s. Now you can go vote while you're grocery shopping. If you're at Cardenas, you can, and there's a polling location. You can literally stop 5-10 minutes and cast your ballot. And the booklet that the county sent, those locations are there. There's also going to be a couple of community events that are happening. There's going to be block parties. There's going to be come vote with us as a group. I know Chicanos Por La Causa is going to be hosting an event on October 24th. So I'm going to use this as a shameless plug to invite the community at East Las Vegas Library on October 24th. We're going to be there from 5 to 7. Come join us for some free music, some food. But most importantly, join us to build community and walking into the ballots and casting our ballots as a community. Again, being Latinos, we have to be loud. We can't afford to sit this election out. And again, if you're not voting for yourself, vote for your nana, vote for your uncle, vote for your brother, your sister, vote for someone, but make sure that you're not sitting this one out. Mr. Secretary, a lot of our audience is Spanish speaking. Algo que quiera agregar para la comunidad en español, un mensaje que quiera dar.
Sí, es muy importante que la comunidad votan, porque es para el futuro, es para la educación para los niños, es la seguro por el futuro, es todo.
Sí. Y como oyeron, es importante que salgan a votar y no se queden en casa, salgan a votar, busquen la urna más cercana de ustedes y pongan ahora sí que sean Latino loud. Mr. Secretary, any last words you want to add before we end?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely important. Look, Nevada's population is 30% Latino, but only 1 in 5 of us is registered to vote. That's 20%. And we only have a 50% turnout. So 10% of our population is actually voting. If we increased turnout by 2, 3, 4%, we will dominate the outcome of elections pretty significant. And when elected officials like me go back and look at the data and they see why they won their race and the Latino community showed they turned out, our priorities will become number one, and we can believe in government and know that government is working for us.